No newsletter plug. No!
I believe that the update has happened.
Well, it hasn't yet, so even that one part was not quite your best analysis. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Traction Control podcast, your weekly dose of racing game and sim racing news, discussion, debate, chatter, nonsense, whatever you want to call it. I am back from my holiday, and just like that, as soon as Tom noticed I was back, he disappeared. So we have no THL with us today. We do, however, have Tom Bunton, which is great. How are you, Tom?
I'm great.
Excellent, great all round. And we also have the Kinnairds Bistro connoisseur, Ross McGregor, back for more podcasting action. And Ross, you've been away as well the last few weeks, haven't you? You've been taking in some pretty impressive sights.
Ahoy there! Yes, indeed. I was on a cruise to Norway for the last week, and that was good fun. Well, it was 50% good fun and 50% not good fun, but that's not for today.
More on that in the sounds like a members only
the director's
chat
cut.
we need to have.
yeah, that's a members only subscription tier only thing. That
Tom, were you captaining the ship that Ross was on in Norway?
I wish. No, in a past life. Now I barely captain my own inbox.
Yeah, I know the feeling for sure. And because we've been away for a couple of weeks, or at least I've been away for a couple of weeks, my inbox is crazy. So much has happened. Lots of it focused around Le Mans Ultimate, actually, which has been kind of the hot topic recently. And Captain Venerated has kind of enlisted us with some things to discuss here today. So I'm on kind of catch-up duty with what's been going on. And we're going to start with this big topic, Le Mans Ultimate. I know we've been talking about it a lot, but we need to talk about it again because there was all the drama, of course, last week with the version 1.4 announcement and notably the Joker debacle, let's say. So Le Mans Ultimate announced they would be introducing a new Joker system, which would allow drivers who are paying subscribers to Race Control Plus or Race Control Pro or whatever the higher tiers are called, would allow them a chance to essentially wipe the results of one of their online races, both driver ranking and safety ranking. Now, this was met with a large public outcry. It was not positive, if you're reading any of the comments.
It was a joke.
It was not a popular move. And Le Mans Ultimate played the Joker themselves on that decision and wiped the result of it. Not quite, though. They didn't fully cancel the Joker system. They just adjusted it. So it's also now going to be implemented for users who don't pay and subscribe to a subscription, and it will also be you will accumulate them more slowly, so it'll be less of a prominent feature, less of a regular occurrence. And now Tom and Tom discussed this in detail last week, but this was, I believe, before the reversal of the announcement, before the U-turn. However, Ross didn't get a chance to talk about it, and neither did I. So Ross, I will ask for your opinion on the Joker debacle.
Well, I thought the reaction was a bit over the top. Because it was a feature that could only be used like once every 10 races. So I didn't think it would make that big an impact. And your race results weren't going to be affected as well. So I think like it would have been a feature that, well, it is a feature, but it would have been a feature that would have covered like disconnections or, your PC kind of shutting down for no apparent reason. So I didn't think it was like a huge thing. But I am glad that it's like now open to like everyone. It's like a free thing because I do think it's very handy. But for me, it kind of highlights that maybe LMU is struggling to like find a killer feature for its like subscription tiers, Race Control Pro and Pro Plus. Because like at the moment, I don't think there's enough to justify the cost of the subscription. So yeah, like it was interesting to see it kind of play out. I thought it was a bit over the top, the reaction to it, but I'm glad they've kind of rolled it back a little bit and it does include everyone now.
Yeah, I get you on that one. I think I didn't really know what to make of it at first because I can totally understand on one hand why it's a good system to have. And I think the idea was to sort of reduce your frustration at bad driving standards and give you the chance to wipe something where something unfortunate happened to you, whether that be being crashed into or disconnected. I think it's easy to point at, if your PC disconnects or something turns off, you can, wipe that result. But I also think it was to do with all the kind of discussion around driving standards. However, I don't necessarily think that being able to wipe a bad result is good for driving standards. I actually think in some ways it's almost the opposite, because actually if you get taken out in a race, it might encourage you to go and then, I'll wipe this one anyway, so it doesn't matter what I do now. I can just be, gung-ho. Although, to be fair, Motorsport Games did say that if someone was to then retaliate or do a deliberate action, the protest system means that, you know, the Joker might actually be undone. So if you apply a Joker to something because you were driving like an idiot, the protest system means that you actually couldn't use that Joker, but that obviously requires someone to protest you. So there's lots of different sort of layers to this. I actually liked your analogy, Tom, of like, think of it like dropped scores, but obviously not for a competitive
drop
sense,
rounds.
more as a sort of a way to get rid of a bad event and wipe it from memory. I don't think it's pay to win necessarily, because at the end of the day, you're only just progressing in terms of your driver rank and safety rank to change who you race against in future splits. Having said that, every single video game, there's not really a purpose. It's about having fun, even if there is a goal that you're reaching towards. So there's just so many angles you can come at this from. And I think the whole thing was just maybe a little bit messy, but I have to say credit where credit's due to Motorsport Games. They listened to the community. They reversed it or changed a decision based around what people were most annoyed about to do with that decision. Your thoughts on the U-turn, Tom?
My thoughts are broadly the same as last week. It's interesting hearing what Ross is saying about the outcry perhaps being a little over the top. I think if you're talking about for what the effect the feature will have, then yeah, absolutely. But I think the outcry was kind of principled, i.e., if you have the pro subscription, after a spread of race results, you will have a higher safety rating and performance rating than somebody who doesn't have the subscription, and so you're paying to go higher up the splits, if you like. And I think that to any extent whatsoever is not going to sit right with the bulk of the community. I also think that we're dealing with a sector of gaming that is getting a bit fatigued with costs. It's already a very expensive hobby, you know, wheels, pedals, cockpits, screens, high-end PCs, subscriptions for this, subscriptions for setups, telemetry subscriptions, and now subscriptions for playing online. I think the more and more that you put behind the subscriptions, the more frustrated people will get. And whether that's right or wrong is totally different, right? Because you could be like, there is an argument to say, well, boo-hoo, you spent £1,000 on your rig, you can afford an extra few quid a month on your subscription. But actually, I don't think that's the case in a lot of people's circumstances. You know, you'll stretch to get that rig, and then you just want to be able to go and play, and you don't want to be separated from others because you can't afford a monthly subscription, right? So yes, my thoughts are broadly the same, which is I kind of get the principled outrage, but yes, it wasn't going to make a huge difference. But any difference is enough for people to get frustrated.
Yeah, I understand the frustration being about the paywall thing rather than the actual Joker system itself. And yeah, I mean, there's always debate about pricing structures and subscriptions versus DLC. I do think you made a good point, Ross, that I don't know if Motorsport Games needs a way to justify the subscription more to get more people playing it. Obviously, from a business point of view, they need more money. More money equals better products, equals more resource, equals more safety and security, etc., etc. So it's trying to justify that subscription more. But I think you're right. Just that one element caused so much friction that on a point of principle, it was like, okay, if people are taking a stand against this game on a point of principle, it's not going to help us in future. But the pricing structure has been something that's been debated for a long time anyway. We've got a comment, for example, here from Galactic Gremlin, which I believe was a comment left before the decision was reversed regarding the Joker system. They said, the LMU pricing model seems so crazy to me. I don't mind paying for content or even a sub per year, but the sale of services that they are doing is making the playing field not very appealing to walk onto. Those who aren't paying are getting pretty heavily kneecapped. Now, I think the pricing model stuff is interesting anyway, because it's a choice between, in terms of the content specifically, it's a choice whether you pay for DLC or subscribe for DLC. The actual subscription itself on top of that gets you a few features, but nothing too crazy. Like I don't think whether you subscribed or not subscribed to Race Control Plus actually makes a massive difference to your Le Mans Ultimate experience at this stage, because some of the features, like championship modes, for example, you know, they need to be well populated to work. So Le Mans Ultimate needs enough people to be playing them for them to work, and therefore they're not the most popular races, and therefore I don't think you're missing out on something enormous or something that totally changes the experience. So the fact that there's a choice for the content is okay. It's not a downside to have a choice. But I think on your point as well, Tom, about people spending money on their rigs and their PCs and everything being very expensive, a lot of these things are one-time purchases. and you spend your thousands of pounds or whatever it is on your beefy PC, you spend money on your rig, your cockpit, your steering wheel. But once you've done that, that's you set up until something explodes, right? So it's then I think which as it turns out does happen. So for me, it's more the having to keep on paying something continually, and the amount of things in our lives that are now subscription services means that if we want to keep on doing all the hobbies we enjoy, if it's not just based on one-time purchases, if they're all subscriptions, people just struggle to be able to justify them. So I think that's more the issue.
There's it's interesting. Motorsport Games responded to the outcry. They said, we intended Jokers to be something that helped people and not affect gameplay, but in an effort to push more features into the product, we got the implementation on this one quite wrong. The inequality to ranking effects isn't a fair way to handle this. And I think the last bit is the crux of it. The inequality of ranking effects. Putting that behind a paywall just is a big no. And do you know what? Fair play. They tried it. They got the feedback. They changed it based on the feedback. You can't really complain too much, but inevitably it will leave a sour taste in some people's mouths. In fact, we had a comment on the Traxion GG website, which I totally disagree with, but just to kind of give you a sense of the dismay, JS commented on the bottom of the Traxion GG article, said, well, that's unfortunately too late. Once I saw this nonsense, I just pirated the game. Sick of these racing game developers adding these extra charges for their games. The hardware is expensive enough. I'm not paying more for a game after I already bought it. iRacing is even worse, and it goes on. And THL, the inimitable THL, who's not with us this week, said, I agree that the Joker rollout was nonsense, but I hard disagree with pirating any game. So yes, I would agree. Basically, he's very, very annoyed, and his response was to illegally pirate the game, which we do not condone, but you can see the kind of the levels of frustration.
Yeah. Tom delivered the smackdown there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do. Speaking of comments, we do have a couple more comments that came through. This one was before the change to the Joker system. So, comment from Darren Wilkes too. This is another example of papering over the cracks of a creaking multiplayer system. It also says, hey, the more you pay, the more benefits you get. It may not be pay to win, but original Assetto Corsa is looking like I may be coming back. Just maybe it would be good not to be rinsed every 3 months or so by a developer, which kind of is what I was alluding to earlier with the people being tired of paying subscriptions for everything. But then we also had a couple of comments after the U-turn, so to speak, of the Joker system, where it was adjusted to be also available for those who don't pay for a subscription. And this is from 11 Pappy 90. Great that more people get access to it. Calling it pay to win, however, will never not be funny to me. It literally is not. And I kind of understand, because it's not performance enhancing in the event. It's more just to do with your ranking, but your ranking is not really a competitive. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
I think that's debatable, I think that is debatable.
Oh, definitely.
But because it's if you think that your multiplayer career mode, if you like, is to increase your rating and work up the splits, well, you will objectively you will move up the splits faster if you're paying than if you didn't. Presumably you had the same results in both cases. So win, no, obviously you're not going to win the races faster, but you are going to increase your safety rate and performance rating faster. So I think you could put in a decent case to say that it is pay to win. However, that will be funny to the commenter in this case. And that's fine.
I guess it's pay not to lose ranking. That should be the catchy phrase.
Pay to have stiffer competition by being in a higher ranked race and therefore paying to lose. Maybe that's how it works. No, it is like you could form again so many different offshoots here about topics, but it comes back to what I was saying before. Depending on what you call winning in a game, it's not like online where you're progressing in a tournament further because of this and you're therefore winning the game. But at what point does any game become does a goal become actually relevant or important to your life? Winning, if there's money at stake, if there's competition to qualify for, stuff like that, yes. But yeah, at the end of the day, gaming is for fun. Pay to win, the frustration with it normally is about having someone against you in the same race with an unfair advantage to affect your results and positions. whereas this is more like affecting someone's overall stature within the ranking system. So there isn't an official ranking system, is there, in a Le Mans Ultimate? You can't view the top 100 drivers and they're all their rankings. You can just go off what your ranking is.
That's interesting, because actually what you're saying is quite right, that by having the subscription, you would almost falsely be improving your rating, and therefore be driving with people who are faster but with the same rating as you. So it's pay to anyway.
You see what I mean? Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, and I think basically it's pay to lose some frustration. But it's no longer pay to lose some frustration. It's free to lose some frustration, but we'll all be able to lose frustration less often, and that is the Joker system summed up on Le Mans Ultimate. One final comment, which also came in after the U-turn, from Sprainard Kruger 6426. We'll just leave that name at that. They all push small changes to try to subtly move the needle to see what they can get away with. A big FU to anyone that defended this earlier. It's exhausting to constantly be forced to be a watchdog for this type of garbage, but it's the world we live in. So that is a commenter unhappy with having to try and hold the studios accountable via angry comments in order for them to reverse these kinds of decisions, which is a understandable take in that position. But hey, they did reverse their decision that everyone was unhappy about. And at the end of the day, as we all say, people can pay with their wallets. You can pay to subscribe, you can pay to not subscribe, you can choose whether to play the game or not. And just one final thing on Le Mans Ultimate, there was, of course, a full interview that Tom Harrison-Lord did with Stephen Hood last week, which is available on the Traxion YouTube channel, and I believe on audio platforms. I haven't actually checked, I was away, but should hopefully be on all your podcast platforms as well. And if it's not, we'll try and get it up there soon.
It
is.
Good, of course it is.
So Stephen Hood actually answers a lot of questions about all of these things and the future of Le Mans Ultimate in that podcast. So it's well worth having a listen to that, including little tidbits about potentially Garage 56 NASCAR seeming close. So there's a few other interesting bits in there. Definitely worth checking out.
I was going to say, I listened to that podcast a couple of days ago, and Stephen Hood said that we are closer than ever, which could mean, it was always just an idea, and now it's like still an idea, but we've had one discussion about it internally, and it remains an idea. But we are closer than we've ever been. I mean, that's a cynical take, but yeah, it's quite funny. Like, Stephen Hood has his critics, but if you listen to the podcast that THL did, you'll know that he's a genuinely motivated guy. He's a big motorsport fan, and he's actually quite personable. He's quite funny. There's some interesting bits about how he reads all the comments and all the Discord servers, and how he's lurking in unexpected places to hear feedback. So it's well worth a listen.
Now, normally this podcast would come out very early in the morning in the UK, but as you may have noticed, today's edition is coming out later, and that is because this particular topic that we're about to discuss is currently under embargo. So the news should have broken if you're hearing this section of the podcast, and that news is that Ian Bell will no longer be the Straight4 Studios CEO. He will be replaced by Kevin Boland. Kevin, who we have previously had on the Traxion podcast as well, much like Stephen Hood, who we were speaking about a minute ago. So Kevin replaces Ian as the CEO, and this was the statement from Project MOZA Racing. Straight4 Studios can confirm that Kevin Boland has been appointed Chief Executive Officer of the studio. Kevin will oversee the day-to-day running of all Straight4 Studios activities. The studio remains focused on supporting the Project MOZA Racing community, delivering its development roadmap, and continuing to improve the player experience. And then we've got a couple of quotes here from Kevin, the new CEO. And by the way, Kevin was formerly the Chief Development Officer, just to be clear. So he was already high up in a strong position within that company. It's not someone coming in from externally. It is, of course, someone moving within. And here's the quote. Straight4 Studios has an incredibly committed team and a passionate community around Project MOZA Racing. My focus remains the same as it was when I first joined this talented studio, giving the team the clarity, structure, and support it needs day to day while we continue improving the game, listening to players, and building for the long term. On a personal note, I'd like to thank Ian Bell for everything he has done for Straight4 Studios and for Project MOZA Racing, and for the wider impact he has had on sim racing over many years. I'm grateful for the opportunity to carry that work forward with the team. I mean, that's a pretty big bombshell. Ian Bell, a big name throughout sim racing for the last number of decades, a controversial figure, it can be said as well, is no longer heading that particular studio. Now, we've seen this happen before, and Ian Bell comes back with a new studio under a new name with many of the same employees, but this feels like a big moment, Ross.
We don't really know what's happened for this like change to occur. But yeah, like sometimes Ian Bell maybe got in the way of the actual games he was in charge of. Like the stuff he comes out on the social media relating to his games, like the actual his hyperbole doesn't always translate to the finished product, shall we say? So he's a very divisive figure. I think for every person that loves him, there's maybe a person that hates him. That's maybe fair to say. But is it a good thing for PMR? It could be. I mean, ultimately, I think Ian Bell hasn't made a good game since Project Cars 2. So maybe, the halcyon days of GT Legends and GTR2 are gone. So maybe it's time for someone else to have a go. So yeah, it could be a positive.
He's definitely a divisive figure. There's a lot of people that will spend their evenings arguing with him on X, right? But I can't help but notice that he has been a creator or co-creator of GTR, GT Legends, Project Cars, Need for Speed, Shift, Test Drive, Project Motor Racing. So he's had a lot of commercial success. If he'd had success in one or two of those games, or one or two of the games that he's been involved in had been a success, you'd say, oh, well, there is a chance that they were a success in spite of his involvement. But there's so many, it's kind of systematic success over decades, all in racing games. He clearly knows how to get a project off the ground. He obviously knows how to get the correct funding and the correct team in, right? Relative successes. PMR yet to be seen, but the others I think we can all agree were successes. So yes, obviously we don't work inside those teams. We never have done. So we are kind of speculating to an extent, but I guess it would be remiss of us not to at least acknowledge the success that he has founded. Whether or not that's been continued in recent years, I don't know. But it is interesting. We're in an age now where we seem to, as a community, know the names of those people leading games, which I don't think was necessarily the case maybe a decade ago. And stepping into Ian Bell's place is another name that we know, right? Which is Aris. And Aris, as soon as he started moving across from Kunos, obviously via a hiatus, doing I think it was like a blockchain racing game. Aris started as a front man. He was at the expos. He was doing a series of interviews. He was putting himself forward. So we are continuing to live in that age where you kind of know the personalities behind the games, which I kind of like, but you're putting a big old target on your back, and I wouldn't fancy it.
I feel like Ian Bell almost started that. He's a bit of like a maverick, let's say. He's someone that everyone's aware of, and there are lots of opinions out there. He's also not shy of an opinion out there. It's fair to say, and I haven't always agreed with everything he said on X, and I haven't necessarily seen his strategies for things and gone, oh yeah, I would do the same for sure. However, as you say, there's no denying he's been involved in some very successful projects and also some failures as well. I think he's just a big character and a big personality whose name is attached to lots of these big things, and it just he is a walking news report, really, is Ian Bell. He's such a big personality within this industry, and we've covered this a little bit in our history of Project Cars video that we've done. I'd highly recommend going and watching that on the Traxion YouTube channel. But obviously, in some ways, it's like he has caused his own let's say, doubt with in terms of trust. So he's caused his own issues in terms of a lack of trust based on what he said, as Ross alluded to, the hyperbole before games are released, talking about how amazing they're going to be. That is also kind of the job of someone who's marketing a game and trying to sell products. It's part of it. You're going to say it's good, and you're going to then hope that it delivers what you've said. But it's just the way he's gone about that is let's say controversial over the years. But as Tom alluded to, there is absolutely no doubt that the Project Cars franchise has delivered a great racing game experience to a lot of people, especially that second game, even though the third didn't hit the mark, or at least the expectations were set in the wrong direction, however you want to look at it. And he's been instrumental in that, and he's been instrumental in the games before that were so successful, the likes of GT Legends. Go on, Ross.
Yeah, what I was going to say is Ian Bell is absolute box office. Like for a sim racing news website like us, like it's great to have Ian Bell. So whatever he does in future, I hope he comes back to sim racing. in some way, because he does have like great ideas. But like we talk about his kind of career trajectory, and obviously the high points are obviously GT Legends and GTR2 and stuff like that. But I think the career trajectory has gone sort of like that recently, because obviously you had Project Cars 3, Fast and Furious Crossroads, which was just awful. And then you had crazy stuff like the Mad Box, which was like Slightly Mad Studios. I think it was Slightly Mad Studios, like version of the kind of what do you call the Steam machine, Steam box, whatever you call that thing, the home desktop PC. And then you had like Madcoin, which was like a cryptocurrency, which is just insane. And then obviously that was followed up by Project Motor Racing. And yeah, that was quite disastrous in terms of the release. So, you know, there's always something happening on Planet Ian Bell, and we are here for it.
The word mad comes up a lot. Yeah, sorry, Tom.
No, I would say I fully expect to get some abuse in the comments for trying to add a bit of balance to the conversation by just acknowledging the past successes. I've done that in the past, just trying to acknowledge the other side. It comes up in the comments, and that's fine. But yes, it's. I would agree, Ross. I totally agree with everything you've said. But you can't deny that he was a huge part in the growth of this niche, right?
Absolutely,
back in the day.
Yeah.
And did you know that Ian Bell has a steakhouse? I've just been scrolling through his Twitter during this conversation to see if I could find any of those famous tweets. It turns out he has a steakhouse called Bell's Steakhouse and Burgers in Asch. I'm going to say this wrong. Aschheim in Germany. 4.8 stars on Google. Not bad. Who knew?
There you go.
Oh, nice.
I mean, I think he can be a misunderstood figure as well, and I think that sometimes his passion is like misinterpreted or misunderstood. I do get that impression that the way he delivers that in some ways is like, okay, you know, some people maybe don't understand the sarcastic approach. Maybe, you know, I don't want to go too far into this. Is not a biopic on Ian Bell. But clearly
that's another one for the subscribers. For the premium,
geez, we're going to be busy on the members only in the next few weeks. But you know, he's just, as I say, a big character. And at the end of the day, you know, even looking at Project Motor Racing, which ultimately at the moment still feels like, I would say, an overall failure. There's still time, of course, but it's not been a success, put it that way. You know, at the end of the day, Bell had to initially fund Project Motor Racing to begin with to get it going and set up that studio, and he succeeded, and they got a game out. He also, of course, was heavily involved in the deal with Giants to move over to the Giant software, which again maybe wasn't actually a success in the end, depending on what you think of, you know, how that game engine works with the actual racing genre. But also you could say without that deal, maybe this game never would have happened. And obviously it's the publishing deal. It's not just about the game engine. There's so much else there with Giant Software. So it could also actually be the reason why this game is able to continue to build and improve in future. And maybe we'll see a sequel, you know, who knows? So even within this project, which hasn't necessarily gone too well, there's been high points and low points and lots of things that you can point to Ian Bell being instrumental with. So let's just see what happens in the future without Ian Bell at the head of Straight4. So we wish, obviously, Kevin Boland all the best. Wish him good luck in that role. And I'm sure we will be keeping tabs on him. We'll be keeping chatting to him as much as possible in the future. And we'll see what direction Project Motor Racing will take. Moving things on now to some NASCAR news, because we've had some updated information about the upcoming NASCAR 26 title, of course, the sequel to NASCAR 25, the first official NASCAR video game from iRacing Studios. And here are the headlines, let's say. So first of all, the AI drivers can now retire from races. Previously they couldn't, now they can. That's good for immersion, I guess. Road course track penalties will be loosened. The track surface now evolves. And this season's The Chase format will be included. So that's your championship system regulations that are newly implemented to NASCAR in the 2026 season will also be the system used in NASCAR 26. Any thoughts on this stuff, Ross?
Yes, these are all very exciting additions, I think. No, like I feel like these kind of things should have been in NASCAR 25. So NASCAR 25 came out and it got like a few updates post-launch, but I just felt like the kind of iRacing studios just stopped developing it and focused on the next year's edition, NASCAR 26. So yeah, I feel like these things could have been in NASCAR 25 if they really pushed for it. So it's good that they're being added, especially the sort of track cut thing, because I never actually played NASCAR 25, but seeing like the way the cars just dramatically slowed down when you cut the track was just like massively immersion breaking. So I'm glad that's kind of been reworked, but let's just see how well it actually worked when it's out.
I actually thought NASCAR 25 was a fun game to play. And because it was the first iteration of a new series, I can forgive it missing certain features and things that obviously you say should have been in the last game. I understand that, but I think at some point you've got to ship something. And I'm glad that they are making those changes. It seems to be a lot of immersion-based changes and improvements to the game, which is good because I think that's one area where it did lack a bit, especially for players looking to do like more realistic long-term career modes with full-length races and stuff. I do feel like immersion was the issue. There was too many immersion-breaking things. I'm intrigued to see what happens with pit stops and stuff like that, because that was all a very interesting feature of NASCAR 25, how pit stops were implemented, and it sort of acted like a cutscene, and it got a little bit messy, let's say, in some of the longer races. It does sound a little bit, doesn't it, like an update rather than a full game kind of information drop, let's say. But that's sort of the nature of yearly releases. We've talked about it so many times on this podcast, and we've written articles about it, whether games should be yearly releases, whether they should be every second year, whether they should just be live platform services. And it's never that simple. But I think this is just like some inevitable collateral damage with going for a yearly sequel, unfortunately. But hey, I think these are good sounding improvements, even if they are a bit small. And I'm just going to have to wait and see how the actual game feels when we get it. Tom Bunton, I know NASCAR is your favorite sport and you are a massive fan and you see every race. So please tell us all of your thoughts on this incredible update.
Yes, I believe that the update has happened.
Well, it hasn't yet, so even that one part was not quite your best analysis. It will be when the game launches. Well, believe it at that, Tom. You know what? I'm not even letting you have any more than that. Speaking of the game launching,
I'm here all week.
there is more news coming later today, actually, if you're listening to this or watching this podcast the day it's released, because we will see gameplay and we will also see pre-order details for the first time as well. So this game, of course, launches in September, and the 18th of September to be precise. You can find all the information on the Traxion website, but a reminder, check the Traxion website later today and you'll see more information. We'll have more about the gameplay and we'll have more about pre-orders. So plenty to get invested. And then Tom can read up on NASCAR 26 and continue his trip as a mega fan of that.
I'll bring you
sport.
some fun facts next week.
Great. Well, I've got something that's a little bit more in your wheelhouse potentially, Tom. And I didn't even mean the wheel pun, because, and this is big news, this is very big news that dropped tomorrow/yesterday when you're listening to this. MOZA is replacing Fanatec at the Gran Turismo World Series. Now, Fanatec and Gran Turismo go together like salt and pepper, right? There are two names that have been sort of linked at the hip in many ways for a number of years after a previous Thrustmaster collaboration. But wow, MOZA replacing Fanatec at the Gran Turismo World Series. And MOZA is a company, Tom, that doesn't currently have a PlayStation compatible wheel. So what does that tell us?
I mean, you can guess, right? You can guess what this means. But honestly, I do think that this probably ought to have been the story that we led with, because I think this is huge. This is sim racing seismic news, right? It's kind of out with the old guard, in with the new. MOZA have been making moves for years. I remember when we first started discussing MOZA as a brand, I thought, God, these guys have come out of nowhere with quite an impressive hardware range, and they just don't seem to have slowed up. They've got racing and flight sim. They've even got some, tractor wheels. They were second out the blocks with the force feedback pedal. They've got some serious licenses for their wheels, and they come in at an incredible price point, competing really with Simagic, PXN. They're kind of Chinese brethren. But they're just well ahead. They're head and shoulders above. And I think tying themselves to Gran Turismo gives them the last piece of the puzzle, the kind of credibility, the brand alignment with sim racing and racing game royalty that is Gran Turismo. So yeah, huge news. Obviously, it means that they're not going anywhere. They're not slowing up. They're continuing to invest. They're continuing to market. I think it's quite exciting. I think it's quite sad for Fanatec. I don't, we won't know. We won't be able to. There's almost no way of finding out whether this was Fanatec relinquishing it and then Gran Turismo scrabbling for an alternative, or whether it was MOZA outbidding Fanatec for the same sponsorship slot. Right? I'd love to find out. I think that would be fascinating. But no, I think this is perhaps a new chapter. The only caveat with that is that it is sim racing esports, and we've always been quite cynical about the importance of sim racing esports. But then to caveat the caveat, Gran Turismo up there with F1 sim racing is actually fairly successsul.
Yeah, the live events are incredible, and of course, there's no prize money with Gran Turismo, so it's very much you do it for the love of it rather than looking to make a career out of it. And yet the events are hugely successful. They travel all over the world. There's big crowds. The atmosphere is fantastic. It feels like a big Sony Polyphony Digital event. Like it has the gravitas it deserves, if that makes sense. From that,
and of course,
yeah.
THL is in the Hall of Fame as an event winner.
Yeah, I do think that might be THL's greatest racing or sim racing achievement of all time. It was absolutely epic to watch him win that event. And I'm going to go watch it again after this. It was great. Such a feel-good moment. I just think that MOZA have such a big market share. It's built such a big market share over the last few years. You mentioned some of the other manufacturers like, your Simagic and PXN were the examples there. Simagic's quality for products is really, really good. And I would say it's right up there with any of these and with MOZA the likes. But MOZA has been a bigger commercial success, or at least it's put itself out there more, launched so many products in the opening years, and it's continued at that relentless pace. And it's essentially, it's almost pulled away from the rest of the industry just through relentlessness. It doesn't stop. Developing products. And at the start, there was all this drama about, do MOZA products look a lot like Fanatec products? Are they just doing what Fanatec are doing? And that's a whole thing. But the irony now being, of course, MOZA replacing Fanatec as a partner of the biggest racing game or serious racing game franchise of them all, if you especially look at PlayStation 5 and Sony. It's a weird kind of full circle scary moment. And I think it basically is the confirmation, Ross, that MOZA sees itself or may be viewed publicly as now the leading brand in sim racing hardware.
Yeah, so it's like a natural step for MOZA, I think. Over the years they have like hundreds and hundreds of products. It's like they seem to iterate on products so quickly, especially when you compare to like Fanatec and the big European and American brands. They have so many products, which obviously I can attest to because I have a garage full of them. Until obviously you took some of them, John, for a secret project. But it just feels like a natural step for MOZA to move into the kind of mainstream with being associated with Gran Turismo and Sony. And we reckon that this does obviously mean that they're going to make some console compatible products, which is just like it's going to be next level stuff, isn't it? That should kind of shove them into the stratosphere of sim racing.
The question is when. Will these PlayStation compatible wheelbases appear? When will we hear more? I would expect soon. If this sort of announcement is being made this week, surely they've got to follow that up relatively soon, or else people are going to start asking many questions like we're asking. So maybe the next GT World Series event in August, potentially. Maybe they wait till Singapore in October. We'll have to see. But expect some MOZA console compatible wheelbases coming soon, I would say. Who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us, maybe they won't. But it would be very unusual if they were not to do such a thing, especially when MOZA's products are already on Xbox and obviously such a big market share on PC as well. We're going to finish things up this week with some feedback from last week's podcast and some questions specifically on Assetto Corsa Rally. So we had comments, I should say, rather than questions. So our first comment here is from T Jones 666. I want more stages for AC Rally. It's too easy to memorize them at this drip rate. Even an open area like Dirtfish with a few circuit layouts added as well, similar to Project Cars 2, would alleviate some of the thirst. Ross, I'm going to go to you for this one. More stages for AC Rally. Agree with the comment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's we've said it before. It's like the biggest weakness of AC Rally in the future is the fact that it's, complicated laser scan stages. So yes, they need more of these, and they also ideally would get modding enabled quite soon, so we can have user made stages. It's kind of what makes Richard Burns Rally such a success story today, is the fact that there's like hundreds of stages you can try. And yeah, for AC Rally to kind of succeed long term, it needs more mileage to keep everyone kind of interested and motivated.
Yeah, it's kind of an impossible situation, isn't it, where you need more stages, but how do you create more stages at that higher quality without quadrupling your resource? It's the amount of time it takes to make good stages. Any rally game, I think, that's good and gets played a lot, you will familiarize yourself with the stages. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Unless you're in a situation like Richard Burns Rally, where you have hundreds of mod stages coming in, you can't necessarily control the quality of them. So there's a debate we've had before, of course, and I would obviously love more stages on AC Rally. I don't see how they can do that, unfortunately. And I think it may become a game where if you play it a lot, especially in this early stages, you will just learn the stages off by heart. And I've actually made a point, I think, of not playing AC Rally too much aside from content for Traxion, because I don't want to know every single corner off by heart at this point. I'm still really enjoying playing stages for the first time. And thankfully, I'm not playing it enough to ruin that yet. But of course, that's a really silly sounding thing to say. I'm enjoying the fact that I'm not playing a game I love very much so that I can enjoy it more. It's a bit broken.
Yeah, they always talk about that triangle between quality, time, and cost. And I think they've got the quality element right. The cost element, no, I don't think anyone's complaining about the cost of AC Rally at the moment, so they've got that right. But you can't. The idea is you can never have all three, right? And so it's time, which is what they've chosen to sacrifice on. And we've spoken about this a couple of times on a few of these episodes, and I've said previously that I quite like the deliberate high quality cadence that they're releasing updates on. And I guess you would rather have the community saying we want more than the community saying this isn't very good. And I think given that they're not a huge studio, I think they've probably made the right decision to leave the people wanting more, make sure that everything they put out is of a really high quality. And if the only complaint you're getting is that people want more of your product, then that's pretty good.
People are thirsty for new stages, aren't they, Ross?
Very thirsty. Very thirsty. I'm very thirsty.
Yes, I am too. I might have a drink of water. I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is also just a completely inevitable consequence of an early access program for a big game like this. Like, by launching the game before the content's all there, people are going to only have 4 stages to pick from. They're going to learn those stages. And then every time a new stage comes out, it's like everyone's caught up. So because everyone's caught up, every time there's something new, people can then spend lots of time on that, learn it, and the cadence of stages releasing actually doesn't get ahead of the community enjoying them. If you launch a game with 20 stages, people will try different stages. Some will learn some will learn others. And then when you release new stages, there's still all these stages that people don't know off by heart. So by launching an early access, you're getting the money in, you're getting the feedback in, all that stuff. Unfortunately, you are just going to have to accept that people will know your game before the game becomes version 1.0. So that's it. And then finally, we have a second comment relating to the controller chat that you guys had last week, Tom. And I know you made the point that a lot of people listening to this podcast will be playing on steering wheel, but actually there'll be a surprising number that also play on controller. And I think that's very valid. I think the majority of people playing racing games play them with a controller. Even I enjoy playing certain games more with a controller because it's easier and it's less effort. Only the really serious sim stuff do I jump on the rig for. And this comment is from Rose55. I'm always on controller for all my racing games, so I'm really glad to hear that they actually care. And I think that's very important. And thank you for sharing that with us, because I know you will not be the only one listening to this that does not have a rig and a wheel setup. These things are expensive and they take up space. And a lot of people enjoy racing games without them. In fact, I'd say the majority. So good to know that is being looked after and thought about from even the serious sim developers like Supernova Game Studios as well. So on that positive note, I think it's time to end the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can leave comments in the YouTube thread if you're watching on YouTube. There's also Spotify comments, so leave a comment if you're watching or listening on Spotify. And of course, subscribe, like on whatever podcast platform you are using to consume the Traxion Control podcast. We will, of course, be back again next week. And remember, you can ask us any questions, and we may well use it on the podcast in future by joining our Discord server. Discord, well, turns out, traxion.gg/Discord, or discord.gg/Traxion, which I accidentally said one time. Turns out that actually works. So you can pick and choose your favorite URL, and you can join the Discord server. You can ask us questions, and we will, of course, bring them up in future podcasts. So from myself, from Tom Bunton, and from Ross McGregor, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again soon.
John!
I forgot to plug the newsletter, so go and subscribe. Tom, what's the URL?
TractionGG/newsletter. That's my favorite URL.
That's quite hard to remember. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Bye.